Not anymore. So you would be able to report accurately if you were at the time.
I know, right? No, I would not say I was a golem.
Okay?
I'd say
I'm not
especially in the beginning. Yeah, definitely not.
saying this to insult people. I don't really care how people take it. I'm telling them what they really are and what the dark occultists think of them.
Calm down,
They call
Christian.
them
You're
their
triggered,
dogs and
apparently.
their pets. That's their name for the police and the military.
God, I'm
Boy.
There's a whole
triggered for
series
evidence.
on that.
He looks triggered as fuck right now.
And I'm not telling you that from book knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that
Look at
from
this-
their lips to
look at
my
this
ears.
triggering.
That's what they call them.
Triggered.
The golem
Over
is
here
in
just
this
fucking
mindset.
reeing my ass
Since
off,
I
just
have
fucking
suffered,
balding.
I will cause suffering to others. Since I can't deal with my nested psychological traumas and childhood issues and inadequacy issues, okay, I'm going to take out all of that nested subconscious psychological frustration on other people that I have no right to take it out upon. That's the golem mindset. Self-loathing is created when an earlier trauma has been suppressed and buried deeply into the subconscious. That's the role of the subconscious, to protect the conscious mind from traumatic experiences so that the conscious mind doesn't keep reliving it and therefore re-experiencing it in the physiology. However, if we never bring up that shadow material to
the chat, I want all of the people that still support Passio in the chat. I'm requesting permission to speed this up a little bit by increasing the speed of the playback of the video. I will not do it unless the Passio supporters in chat want me to or say it's okay. So please say in the chat if it's okay if I speed this up by like 20% or something. We have an hour and 13 minutes left.
Is there anything left in this that it's going to make claims or provide arguments for the existence of natural rights, or is it just like ergo, natural law, ergo?
We are hitting the point at which when I watched it last time, I stopped watching because I got the strong feeling that he was done making arguments. So I do not know what comes in the next hour and 13 minutes. I want to watch it. Want to make sure. Okay, I don't want to be accused of skipping anything or speeding past anything. Okay, it looks like we have unanimous from the Passio supporters, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit.
It builds and builds and builds until it ultimately destroys us, psychically and spiritually. All right?
I didn't know.
Confronting, dealing with.
I didn't know I was going to pitch shift him.
And healing that trauma. People don't want to do that work. It's too hard to dredge up that shadow material. It's hard work. Believe me, to come out of the mind state I was in, I had to do that shadow work for years of more suffering and pain.
This is the same
what do
video.
I have to look in the mirror and confront about myself, and then work to change, and admit thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. I don't know how many thousands of times I had to look in a mirror and say that to myself. Sometimes to a point where I was so depressed I couldn't get out of bed for days. I would just lay in bed and play doom metal all day.
Doom
Literally, endlessly, repetitively. And just sitting there in that condition of total self-loathing and total depression because of what I know I took part in. And that I know was still my mental makeup, was still my psychological makeup that was going to take years to get out of. And I'm trying to explain this to prevent people from having to go through all that suffering.
I'm going to slow this down.
Knowledge can be gleaned.
I don't want to make fun of him with this.
It can be done. I'm not telling you that's easy work, but it is possible. Such trauma could take the form of feelings of inadequacy, whether they are real or imagined. And you know what that mind state ultimately is? It's self-prison. That's somebody putting themselves in a cage. These people who want to take out their psychological frustrations on other people, they're prisoners. They are in the cage, and they love being in the cage. They don't have any desire for freedom. The only kind of person that would have no desire for real freedom is a person who's in the psychological state of self-loathing and hates themselves and does not love themselves. Now, what heals self-loathing? Self-respect. And we have to know what the word respect means. And this is about looking at yourself. Introspection. Respect comes from the Latin re, meaning again, and the Latin verb spectare.
Not cool, man. You get that shit under
You put
control.
them together to look at again, to take another look at. Well, what are you taking another look at? You're taking another look at yourself. That's what respect starts as. You can't give something to somebody that you don't
Rip
have.
fucking
If I don't
headphone
have $10
users,
in my
God.
pocket, can't give it to you. If I don't have a coin in my pocket, I can't give it to somebody else. You got to have it first to give it. So nobody can give respect to anybody else unless they first developed it inwardly. Self-respect has to come first. And that's why these people don't respect anybody, order followers.
Did you
most
say
of all
inwardly?
themselves. Until they do that work of self-introspection, they're not going to develop that self-respect. And I'm not telling you that's easy work. It's hard work that can take a lot of time. And it's dredging up shadow material that most people want to run away from. They don't want to confront that about themselves. Only self-respect can heal self-loathing and therefore help to put an order follower on the path to conscience. We need to take another look at ourselves. The lost word. All right, this is the end of the natural law segment, and I'm just going to talk about solutions toward the end a little bit. All right? The lost word. It's a concept in esoteric Freemasonry, which represents a state of consciousness that has been largely, quote-unquote, lost to the majority of human beings.
Quote-unquote lost.
In order to
So not actually lost.
the quote-unquote lost word,
Not actually
a human
lost.
being must work upon
Lost.
themselves in order to achieve a state of equilibrium or balance between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. In such a state of balanced consciousness, the being has come to know oneself, as well as the working operations of the macrocosm, meaning natural law. In doing so, that person has also come to understand the objective difference between right and wrong, or as these concepts are referred to in the tradition of Freemasonry, they have come to understand the difference between light, which is right, and darkness, which is wrong. Or light, which is knowledge of right and wrong, and darkness, which is ignorance of right and wrong, respectively. All right? What is the lost word, though? That's the lost word, ladies and gentlemen. You know the knowledge of the highest levels of Freemasonry now. Most actual Freemasons in the lodge system don't know the lost word. The lost word is no. And I would suggest to you, it is a dual word. The lost word is dual, meaning it's two things. It's not just one. It is the word no, N-O, and it is the word know, K-N-O-W. Those are the lost words. Okay? In the enlightened state of consciousness, generated
work
through
in
the
any
knowledge
other
of
language
natural law,
besides
a human
English?
being is finally able to speak the so-called lost word, which is no. No is the word of all power. Only when we say no to those who would claim to be our owners, those who would claim that it is they who will decide which rights we have or do not have, do we stop externalizing our power to anyone outside of ourselves, and in doing so, reclaim all of our rights, all of our property that has been taken without right. Sadly, very, very few people in our world have the knowledge, care, and courage that is required to do this.
Saber.
That's no in Spanish.
Saber.
Yeah, I'm going through various different languages, and so far,
Saber.
no dice.
This is why this all-powerful word is considered lost.
Filipino, nope, not even close.
And there's the other variant of the lost
Liviano,
word.
not even
No.
close.
Know your rights. The reason you have to
Latin,
know
not
what the
even
difference
close.
between right and wrong is, and therefore know what rights you have and what rights you do not have, is because those who do not know those things will never say the lost word to someone who claims to be their owner. They will not say no, N-O.
Chinese, no.
So let's look at some
None of
solutions. I
these-
call this section Teaching Natural Law to Others. Because as we're talking about, education is the only solution. Knowledge is the solution. The
English
propagation of
anomaly.
that knowledge is education, which means to lead out from. Educare in Latin means to lead one out from something. And what is education? It means
Time
to
for
lead
whiskey.
one out of darkness, out of ignorance. That's what a real teacher does. You know, doesn't push somebody out. It says, I'm going to go first and show you the way. And you could follow, you know, if you feel that this is the accurate path. Okay? But you could do the same discovery process. It's a repeatable
Model down
process. That's what
ceremony.
a science is, which I've said this is not a belief system or religion. It is a science. This is also known, teaching natural law to others, which is what I am doing, has been called in all of the positive occult traditions, the great work. And I call it the true great work, because the dark occultists take everything and twist it around, and they have their own variant of the, quote, great work, which is creating a world of total slavery. That's the dark great work. I call this the true great work, or the light great work, however you want to refer to it as. It's just a piece of jargon. It's just a tag. that we put on it. Shift happens. Well, maybe, but maybe not. The result's not guaranteed here, folks. The New Agers want to tell you it's all guaranteed, it's all in hand, you know. The Zeta Reticulians are going to be coming in from orbit any moment here, give us all the secrets to the universe, save us from our own ignorance, you know. You just got to wait a few more years or decades or millennia. A quantum shift in human consciousness is required for humanity to become free of its self-imposed state of slavery. Unfortunately, this great change is not an automatic process, nor is it guaranteed to happen at all. We could be in this condition for a very, 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 very long time. Or it can snowball and lead to total annihilation and the extinction of the human species. It's not the positive outcome is not guaranteed. Anybody who thinks it is very naive and extraordinarily right-brained and overly
Welcome
positive.
back.
I'm not telling you the negative outcome is guaranteed either. I'm telling you it can go either way depending on how consciousness goes. About how many people in quantum numbers are going to choose truth over deception. That's what's going to that's what's going to determine the outcome. Whether or not it will occur is a function of the human will to learn the truth and to teach it to others. This involves enormous effort, enormous dedication, and most of all, enormous persistence. You can't give up. Continuous application of will is required. Continuous work. In alchemy, there's a saying. It's like the catch.
Is there something to this that is there a trick to getting humans to think something so he's describing what he's talking about as something difficult to learn and very time consuming. It requires constant study and effort to master, but it's not hard. So is there a trick to this? Is this a manipulation? Like he's convincing people that that this is more special than it is, or that it's harder than it is for some kind of for a reason? Or is it what is the occult thing gives it like a forbidden fruit flavor that might make it more enticing for people to want to get into, and I don't know. This just feels weird.
We got the secrets, man. The secrets that you're not going to get anywhere, except YouTube, the most popular form of media consumption in the world.
I think Mr. Jesus hit on a point much earlier, I think like 5 hours ago at this point, maybe 6. And that was, I don't think it technically qualifies as a Gish Gallop, because for a Gish Gallop to happen, you have to make an argument. But
at least one. Or I guess at least 2, maybe 3.
Yeah. The strategy that's being employed here, it's very similar in the sense that you overload someone with information to the point where they have to make a concession somewhere in your argument, right? Because they can't address everything. And especially if you're not someone who can actively be looking for the red flags in an idea, most of this stuff is just going to wash over you and get shoved into those brain folders and just get stored away with everything else. So I think there's a lot that goes into that as well. And notice how more than once he's recommended several different 6+ hour seminars and talks and videos that I'm pretty sure, I haven't watched them, but I'm pretty sure follow an almost identical format to this one. And
is it that Scientology thing where you get started early on, you're like an initiate, and you read a little bit, and you're like, this doesn't make sense, I've got some questions, and they're like, oh, you just don't understand, you need to read more, and they hand you another book, and then you read that one, and you still have questions, they just say, oh, well, you haven't read enough, you need to read more, and it's like they just kind of drown you in information until you stop asking questions and just start believing the guy that's speaking really confidently. That feels not good.
I think the idea is there was a few things that he was getting out of the gate first. A lot of them were very kind of okay, I can see. All right, this is pretty easy to understand, pretty straightforward. And then it just slowly started dripping in more harder to believe things, more esoteric things. And then now we're towards the end and we're talking about David Icke and aliens and chakras. I think it's like a slow, gentle trip. Like it's kind of like the whole the Mormon thing. Like when Mormons come to your door, they don't come up and say like, hey, if you become a Mormon, when you die, you're going to have your own planet, and all your kids or you're going to have your own solar system, and all your kids are going to get an individual planet, and then you're going to have endless celestial sex with your wife in heaven, and have multiple spirit babies, and you're going to populate your world, and you're going to become your own god, because God is just like one God out of millions of gods who was just a good Mormon on another planet. Like, they're not going to tell you that stuff. They're just going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we believe in Jesus. And there's like part 3 to the Bible, and it's kind of cool. You should check it out, and we should pray over it. And it's the idea of milk before meat. And there's kind of like a little bit of this going in. He may not be doing it intentionally, or maybe he is. Maybe he's like, I don't think people are going to jump on board right away if I start immediately into the Davidic stuff and the chakras and the New Age stuff and stuff like that. We'll talk about like the occult stuff. We'll just say, like occult. Like, occult's not that scary of a word. It just means hidden knowledge. You like secrets, don't you? Oh, well, let's introduce this thing. I was like, okay, so this seems reasonable. This seems reasonable. I don't know about this one. I don't know. The other stuff seemed pretty reasonable. I trust him so far. He seems to be on the level. And then, by the end of it, you're just kind of trusting and believing the stuff that he's doing. And by that time, he's just dumping all kinds of information and sources over and over and over again, to the point you're just like, I guess this is true. This makes sense. Why wouldn't there be aliens out there coming to visit us all the time? And why wouldn't there be lizard people who run the government? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some red flag going off in my head about what's happening.
Phrase for the alchemical tradition.
I would say
labore.
I was just real quick as like a comparison point. Passio, like we've done what I feel like is a really good job of condensing everything he said into, well, besides part 3, but things happen, into basically 3 pages. Something that could be spoken in 10 minutes, 20 minutes if you want to really sell all of it. Maybe a half hour at most if you get really dramatic with it all. And like when we talked about natural law, we did a 2.5 hour conversation where we made multiple arguments and covered probably, 24 topics in that whole thing, talking about all these different ramifications and everything. And that was just 2.5 hours. And it was just chock full of different ideas and things. But this presentation, we spent a solid hour and a half, well, probably closer to an hour on the 8 keys, which were all just assertions, the mentalism, correspondence, vibration, and each one of them got their whole full thing with zero substance. I don't know. It's just something that I'm kind of pointing out. I think it's just a different communication technique that maybe the more you talk about something, the more it gets hammered into somebody's head, And
at this point in the seminar, like, the brains are starting to get overloaded and numb. So
Et constantia. It means work and constancy. Continual efforts. That's what's going to get this boulder up the mountain. That's it. And it's going to go kicking and screaming, folks, because of the level of calcification the human mind is at. I don't expect this to be an easy process. I'm not blowing smoke up your rear end and telling you, hey, come over and do the great work. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so easy. We're going to get it done real quick, and everything's going to be fine. Okay? If I was some new age guru who was trying to get you all to believe what I'm saying, that's what I would tell you. Because all I'd be worried about is how popular I am and how many followers I can accrue. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in telling you how it really is. That doesn't make me popular. As a matter of fact, that makes me hated by a lot of people. Okay? This is not going to be easy. A quantum shift has requirements. Quantum, the word quantum is derived from the Latin noun quantum. It's the same word in Latin as it is in English. Quantum in Latin means an amount of something. In order to tip the scales of truth and justice back to balance, a certain amount of people actually need to be doing the great work to help others to receive truth. If we don't have enough people doing that, those scales are not going to tip in the opposite direction. Got news for you. We need to hit a critical mass number. Numbers are required.
And if you don't believe him, go there and he'll tell it to you to your face.
Tiny portion can make great change happen. Nonsense. It's not called a quantum shift for no reason.
Evidence.
It's called a quantum shift because quantum means an amount. Okay? You need to put enough force on that scale to get the truth to tip in the other direction. If you don't have that amount, it's not going to tip. All right? So, individual behavioral choices, they are either based in harmony with natural law or opposition to natural law. They combine in their energy and effect, and in the aggregate, meaning in the sum total, they influence the quality of the manifested shared human experience. That's how reality is created. We're not very contradictory to the New Age notion. Each individual is not creating their own reality. In the aggregate, humanity is co-creating the collective shared experience that we are all undergoing. We collectively create our shared experience. Not each individual creates the reality that everybody experiences. Yeah, you do create a microcosmic aspect of how you experience your life, whether you're experiencing self-inflicted suffering, large amounts of it or not. That's how the laws of attraction work at an individuated level. But at a mass level, they work in the aggregate. We need a population who understands and lives in harmony with natural law. And numbers are required for that to happen. This dynamic acts as a perfect expression of the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. As the individuated units of consciousness are co-creating reality, so the macrocosmic reality shall become and shall be experienced. Decisively contrary to the New Age view, in order for a quantum shift to take place, numbers are required. So what is the true great work? The true great work can only be performed after one has already realized the truth regarding natural law and brought oneself, one's own actions into alignment with natural law. That's when it begins. Because once you do that and you're no longer in that internal contradiction or opposition, that's when you can legitimately start teaching it to other people because you know it deeply enough and you've actually aligned your behavior to it. So the true great work is what comes after that. And here's what it is. This is actually what the true great work is now. It is the arduous task of influencing other people to go through the very same process of change, of positive change in consciousness that you have gone through. It is to help them to realize that in supporting and condoning the legitimacy of authority and government, in other words, man's law, that what they have actually been supporting and condoning is the legitimacy of slavery, and that they were immoral for having done so. Now that is hard work. Because people don't want to hear this. They want to believe what they want to believe. They want to be true what they want to be true. They filter their perceptions through those lenses. In short, what the true great work comes down to is to actually get people to abandon their religions, their false religions, really, I should make this slide say. The false and dogmatic beliefs which hold back the progress of consciousness by impeding the reception of truth and natural law. They're calcified religious belief systems. That's what has to be broken down and abandoned. Carl Jung described the great work beautifully. I consider him a modern-day alchemist, as I consider many other teachers of the great work. He said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Making the darkness conscious. Not wishing for it to become conscious, not meditating upon it, by making it happen through an act of will. And that can only be done if enough people are doing the great work. Okay? This latter procedure that he's just described, he says, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. So few people are doing this work. The answer is to actually become the teacher. I don't do this because I want a lot of people to be students and follow what I'm saying. I could care less whether you follow me. Believe me, I'm telling you, the wrong thing to do would be to follow me. That's a bad example. You follow me, you're going to go down a deep path of suffering for many, many years before you come out of it. It would be a bad choice. I'm telling you to follow truth, to know truth. Has nothing to do with me. All right? When people hear that's what the great work is, to help change other people's minds, once you change your own, it's like this. Let me run away from that as fast as possible. Are you crazy? You want me to do what? That's the hardest thing there is to do. Exactly. That's why so few people are doing it. Many hands make light work. If we had more people involved in the effort, it might go smoother. It might go faster. Jefferson said, educate and inform the whole mass of people That is the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Education is the answer. Researcher Donald McIlvaney said in his book, Toward a New World Order, in every declining civilization, there is a small remnant of people who adhere to the right against the wrong, who recognize the difference between good and evil, and who will take an active stand for the former against the latter. There's a small group who can still think and discern for themselves and who will courageously take a stand against the political, social, moral, and spiritual decay of their day. Brilliant. The words that are attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, and many people will never have heard this quote. He says, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household." We're going to talk about who the enemy really is. "Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." These are words attributed by Jesus, but what you want to put in place of Jesus is the word truth. The way, the truth, the light, knowledge, knowledge of natural law, Christ consciousness, okay? He's telling you, there are going to be people in your own family that aren't going to align themselves with right over wrong. They're going to continue to choose slavery. They're going to continue to advocate slavery. These aren't people who you want to continue to align yourself with if you have made an effort to truly explain what's really taking place. See, this is the concept of true forgiveness and turning the other cheek. It doesn't mean turn the other cheek and continue to ignore evil and excuse evil indefinitely while it destroys you. It means you have to give people who you're close with and you have an affinity with more chances than you would give just, somebody who you don't know to learn the truth. It's like saying, because I really care about this person personally, I'm going to keep going back, and I'm going to keep hitting them with the truth. And eventually, if they come over to the side of truth and right, fine. But what he's saying here is eventually, this spiritual war is going to go hot, so to speak. And the people, even who are closest to us, if they don't align themselves with right, are the people who are ultimately continuing the evil in the world. They're the real spiritual enemy. What will this battle really be against, this spiritual war? Well, I say it will really actually be against inner demons that exist in the psyche of mankind. And these inner demons are egos that are hardened in what I've referred to as negative knowledge.
And like 10
emotional
hours
mind
ago.
Control and the fear of true freedom. So negative knowledge is the concept that somebody already knows. They don't want to look at something because, hey, I already know what's really going on. Okay? It's the illusion of knowledge. The greatest enemy may not be ignorance, but rather the illusion of actual knowledge. And people.
So you mean this entire seminar?
And not only don't they have the truth, so they're at zero there, right? They're at the 0 point there because they haven't really started looking in the truth for themselves. But they're attached to all this stuff that isn't true. So that puts them in the negative. They've got to do work to get back to zero of knowing nothing. That's why I call it negative knowledge. Got to do hard work to get back to a clean slate, to start taking in some good stuff. Many people are in that state, and the people who are in that state largely are the overly intellectual, the super left-brained, the left-brain prison, folks. Emotional mind control is the second inner demon. I encounter this all the time through people with my work. So many people don't have the thick skin to listen to somebody like me, and that's okay. That's all right. Again, what Art talked about is that in the ancient traditions, they talked about reserve the meat for the strong men and furnish the milk for the babies. All right? I'm not here to convert the babies. I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the energy for that. What I'm trying to do is get the other teachers ready who might have the energy and patience for that. Because that's not me. And I'm being 100% perfectly honest with you that that's not me. I'm not here to do that. Okay? I'm hoping to bring some other people that are most of the way there, all the way there, so they can start doing that on a wider scale. They're going to be the people who are going to work with people like that, not me. I'm just being honest with you about it. Emotional mind control comes in a couple of forms. Well, if this is unpleasant, the New Age variant is this right here. If it's unpleasant, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it, and I certainly won't want to tell others about it. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I'll just ignore it and it'll go away on its own. Well, what happens when you do that with any kind of a sickness or a problem? Does it get better? It gets worse.
I will say, this is a pretty salient criticism
the second
of
form of
all
emotional
Twitter.
mind control is People have a problem hearing truth because they don't like or prefer the way it's delivered. I'm not going to stop delivering truth the way I deliver it. This is my style. I like my style, personally. I don't think I have a problem at all in the way I present. I listen back to my presentations, and I don't, totally pat myself on the back, but I say, I did a damn good job there. I'm proud of how I did, personally, okay? I'm making an honest assessment about how I present. And again, I realize my presentation style is mostly for the thick skin. It's not for the people with super delicate sensibilities. So be it. That's not really who I'm trying to reach.
What'd you say?
I said, you know what? Passio is a good presenter. He said he's proud of his ability to present. I will be completely honest. I don't know if I could sit up on a stage like this for 8 hours, even with breaks, and talk as fervently and passionately as he does. So you know what? He's got that skill. I will give him that.
Agreed.
I'm trying to do vertical integration, not horizontal integration. Build up the community of people who really get it, and they can start propagating it to the masses. This concept is about, the attractive newscaster on the nightly news. She can whisper sweet nothings in your ear all night with the blue frequency.
Longest talk I've given is what, an hour?
Okay?
Hour and a half?
Say 2 + 2 = 5.
In Acapulco?
2 + 2 = 5.
No, unrelated.
She's going to get a
business.
lot of people to believe that nonsense.
Oh,
right?
okay.
But the person who's actually
Acapulco
telling
was
you
like
the truth,
1
you
hour,
might not
I
like the
think,
sound of his
45 minutes.
voice. You might not like the harshness that he comes to you with the truth. He might be screaming through a bullhorn and saying, "Hey, you're in danger. You are actively in danger." There is an imperative.
Well, I mean, I've done
here.
videos. I guess that counts.
Okay, there is a time consideration here. You don't have all the time
I've
in the
done
world to
live
correct
streams
this.
that went on for
All right?
16 hours.
People say, "Well, I don't like to make you
What do you think this is? Hey, when we hit the end, this is Desert Bus. We're just going to turn around and run it again to go back.
Oh, okay.
I think he's fear mongering or making a bigger deal out of this than it is. They're not
I thought we were.
interested
I thought we
in
were
the
going to watch Thrive after this.
Oh!
Wait. I thought we all agreed to meet up and watch Matrix 4. What?
No,
That'll be a great movie.
that ain't me. That ain't me.
Sorry,
The
I
actual
know.
information.
I keep derailing.
Hey, Jake,
I only
over
like
Float.
good
I
movies.
see you. Yeah, we have him sped up by about 20% just to get through the last hour of this. It's not meant to be a shot at him at all. We're just trying to get through the last hour.
The way that was said offended me. I don't prefer the sound of his voice or the tone he just took. Well, does that have any damn thing to do with whether the information was true or not? The people who are in this mind state are under emotional mind control. They believe you can determine the veracity of informational content based upon how it makes you feel. And this is a logical fallacy. That cannot be done. You cannot think with the emotions, and I'm not telling you to disregard the emotions. They're unbelievably important.
What?
I missed it.
You can't think with emotions, but also they're unbelievably important.
I see what he's trying
I don't
to
know how to
do.
put it.
So he's doing the left and right brain thing. Like if the left brain is just taking over, then atheism. But you got to have some emotional weight to your logic. I think that's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah.
The information was true or not?
Passio for too long. I'm
The people
understanding
who are
him.
in this mind state are under emotional mind control. They believe you can determine the veracity of informational content based upon how it makes you feel. And this is a logical fallacy. That cannot be done. You cannot think with the emotions, and I'm not telling you to disregard the emotions. They're unbelievably important. They are our compass for morality in our lives. They're the compass through which we should set the direction of our behavior. But you can't come to determine and analyze and break down what's true or not and make a filtering system based on just how the information made you feel when you heard it. Okay? You have to actually think with the mind, with both hemispheres of the brain, with true intelligence to come to filter and determine what's true. Okay? No matter how much anybody wants to, give you that soft, sweet, pleasant, emotional voice, okay? That person's still lying to you. And no matter how much the person who comes with an abrasive, harsh, nasty, or scratchy voice might keep telling you 2 + 2 = 4, and you don't personally like their tone, guess what, folks? It still equals 4 at all times and places. That's the truth. No amount of pleasantry or wrapping up the lie is ever going to make this statement on the left here true. Ever.
You're a wonderful person, and
but yet, that's what
taxation
people would
is
rather
theft.
prefer to hear if it's told to them in a nice, pleasant tone. Truth is
Your life is
belligerent,
valuable.
as I said at the beginning of the presentation.
Drugs should be legal.
It is, by its very nature, at war with the forces of falsehood and deceit. Brecht. We literally believe that we are in the right to ignore a message of truth if the messenger is somehow distasteful to us. I would argue this to be a symptom of total madness. That's an anonymous quote I also found on a forum. And that's a great piece of wisdom. That's a gem of wisdom right there. It is total madness to disregard truth just because we don't like the way it was said. It's called emotional mind control. It's been a big part of my work that I've tried to explain to people. Where does the fear of true freedom come from? All right, and this is going to lead into my future work, which is a whole nother series of presentations. I'm going to go deeply into this in the future. It's very difficult to see here. There's actually a tree there. It's kind of in a deep red because I'm going to put some text over top of it. I should have started it in a more bright red and then faded it into the background, but forgive that on this slide. You can look it up here at the top of the tree. There's the leaves, all right? The leaves are one's refusal to own their own personal responsibility. Now, you would think, oh, that's way down at the root. No. That's the symptom that's manifesting up at the top of the tree. That's actually the leaves on the tree, the leaves and the twigs, right? Then we get down to the big branches and the trunk of the tree. We're getting closer to the heart of the real psychological issues that are at work driving the negative aspect of the problem, all right? And this we've already talked about, self-loathing due to lack of self-respect. Now, what am I really describing here? What have we actually been describing? What kind of people want to live in perpetual refusal to own personal responsibility because they have some nested traumatic issues that have led to self-loathing and lack of self-respect? What am I really describing there? What? Well, yes, it's a slave mindset, but there's something else that I'm describing. What kind of person is that? A child. Thank you. We're talking about people who are psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually immature. They have not grown up. They have not accepted personal responsibility, which is a hallmark of true adulthood or maturity. And this is due to the trauma that they've undergone that's led to self-loathing, okay, and the lack of self-respect, which is why they don't want personal responsibility. They want to remain an eternal child. Now, let's find out what is at the root of this tree of evil. Because until we go into this space, into this causal factor of these other manifesting psychological conditions, we're not actually hitting the actual root of the problem. If a child doesn't like themselves, they hate themselves, they feel they're not good enough, they're not worthy, they have all these imagined feelings of inadequacy and self-loathing, okay? And that's expressing their refusal to grow up and take personal responsibility for themselves in their adulthood. What kind of trauma specifically has that child more likely than not psychologically undergone? They've gone through a specific type of childhood trauma. And I would argue that most people on earth have gone through this type of trauma. And that type of trauma is called abandonment. The human species is suffering from very deeply seated parental abandonment issues that lie at the very core of the psychological condition that we call the human condition. Until we deal with that nested psychological trauma that has been created through abandonment issues, we're not hitting the roots of the tree of evil. We're not getting down to the very core issue that needs to be understood. My future work, I'm going to be presenting this on December 12th in Philadelphia, for anybody who's in the Philadelphia area. It's going to be what I would call a synthesis, an explanatory synthesis of why this is the root psychological condition of humanity. I call it cosmic abandonment. And this is going to be one of the biggest aspects of the next part of my work. I think what's going to really set my work apart from others in the truth and freedom community and the alternative research community. Until we wrestle with those psychological abandonment issues, we're not getting to the heart of what's causing these other problems in the human psyche, like self-loathing, the lack of the development of self-respect, and the refusal to own the responsibility for one's own actions. And I'm going to connect this with human origins. And I'm going to make the case that it has always been like that. It has always been like that. We have been children on this planet since we have been on this planet. And we have never actually psychically, psychologically, and emotionally and spiritually grown up because as a species, we have undergone what I term cosmic abandonment. So that's going to be coming up in future aspects of my work. What will be required on the part of those performing this great work? And you know, it is like Sisyphus rolling that boulder up the hill. We just got to get it up to the top and give it that one last push so we don't have to keep doing it again. Who knows how many times we've already tried to do this, and it's ended in failure. We need the knowledge of the real enemy, okay? And we'll get to what that is. We need to devote ourselves to service to truth, not even service to humanity. I'm not saying that's not a great virtue to have and to enact. I'm telling you we need to go beyond that. This isn't about service to me, you, or any other individual. It's about service to truth and principles, first and foremost. And we need courage and persistence. And then we need practical real-world skills. The knowledge of the real enemy needs to ultimately come first. And this isn't it, folks. This priest class that goes and meets and has the rituals.
That ain't it.
I'm not telling you they're not evil. I'm not telling you they're not psychopaths. I'm not telling you that we don't need people like that in the world. Okay? I'm telling you that in this spiritual war, this is a tiny, insignificant, as far as numbers are concerned, fraction of the totality of the human population that could not possibly control the minds and the behaviors, and therefore the behaviors of the masses of people without our compliance, without our ignorance. So, while I'm not telling you I, like these people, do I have respect for them as an opponent? Oh yeah, you damn well better believe I do. I don't underestimate these psychopaths.
Is this the,
you know why I worked with them? I know what their will is like. I know what their intellect is like.
Bohemian Grove.
Is that what the photo was from?
I don't think so.
Yeah, the Bohemian Grove.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it was Bohemian Grove. Yeah, so the Bohemian Grove, it's kind of like a little hangout with that a bunch of like really powerful people usually meet up, mostly like Republicans, and they get naked and burn a baby in effigy and worship this giant wooden statue. And it's just a way for them to get outside and rub elbows and network. Naked. But people put a lot of like weight into it. Yeah, naked. It's pretty well,
what are you, gay?
Yeah.
Well, it's natural, which makes it spiritual.
Yeah, but my favorite quote about it of all time came from Nixon. He said that it was the friendly neighborist thing he's ever seen. Yeah. But you can say friendly neighbor.
Don't underestimate their care. They don't have, like I said, they don't have care in the terms of compassion and the normal range of human emotions like we do, but don't think that means they don't have care. They deeply care about what they're enacting, what their agenda is, and they have the will to carry it out, and they're not slowing down. They're unified. They're on a unified front. They're on the same page. Believe it. Know it. I'm not telling you that from, like I said, reading about it or book knowledge. I've been around these psychopaths. Haven't specifically been to this psychopathic gathering, but I've been around them enough. That's not the real enemy, that is. The sleeping masses, hypnotized masses, they're your enemy. People will say, the Illuminati enslaves humanity. No, it doesn't. Humanity enslaves the real Illuminati. And think about that for a little bit. Do those psychopaths in the last slide really enslave us? And first of all, people who call them the Illuminati, there's no such thing. Illuminati means that you're enlightened, the illuminated ones. You want to know who's the enlightened ones? They're in this room. We're the Illuminati. The people who know what I'm talking about here are the Illuminati.
Never mind. I was just going to say, wasn't his whole thing about that they have this occult knowledge that they're intentionally keeping from us, which would imply some kind of enlightenment? I'm sorry, I'm nitpicking. I shouldn't. We're trying to go through the end of
this.
They're
the illuminated ones. They're the ones with the light. They're the ones with the real knowledge.
Here. Don't pause it, please.
Okay? They want to refer to themselves as the enlightened ones.
Natural law,
they might have the dark sun. They don't have the true sun. They're imbued with the black sun.
We're at the end, guys. 36 more minutes, and we're 20% sped up, so we're almost done. Then we'll give our closing thoughts. Call it.
Control and manipulate other people. There's nothing illuminated about that. So the real Illuminati, they're not the enslavers of humanity. The dark Illuminati are not the enslavers of humanity either. Humanity enslaves itself, and they're enslaving the true Illuminati, the teachers who are actually living under the conditions of slavery because they're here with the ignorant people. That's who's being enslaved by humanity. Humanity are the enslavers. And this is another thing that's highly unpopular. People don't want to hear it. They want to think we're powerless victims. There's no choice involved here. This is something that's just being done to us. Okay? And I'm here to tell you, free will is always in existence. And it's a matter of changing one's thoughts and therefore changing one's choices. And that's our own personal responsibility that can never be given away or shirked or shunned. You are always responsible for what we're doing. Service to truth is required. Truth itself is eternal, can never be destroyed. But you know what? Humanity can be destroyed. We can be destroyed when we refuse to act in service to truth as her defenders. People say, oh, truth doesn't need to be defended. Nonsense. Truth needs to be defended at all times and places because the attack on it is never-ending and non-stop, continuous. And if we don't come to her defense, you know what happens? The voice of untruth and deception and evil and mind control rules the day. And the voice of truth doesn't get heard. Because the truth itself doesn't have a physical voice in the physical domain. You know, we have to be its mediums, and we have to be its voice. It's possible for us to co-create a positive outcome in this scenario, but this can only be accomplished if we care enough to learn the truth ourselves, and then we develop the courage to continuously speak it to other people until our voice of truth becomes a non-stop chorus, like the voice of lies and deception and mind control has been for millennia. I'm getting
deep cult vibes over the past 10
minutes.
Courage
is required. Samuel Adams encapsulated this brilliantly. He said, the liberties of our countries are worth defending at all hazards. It is our duty to defend them against all attacks. It will bring a mark of everlasting infamy on the present generation if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without any struggle, or to be cheated out of them by the artifices of designing men. If you love wealth greater than liberty, if you love the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, then go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. Now that's about as powerful as it gets as far as I'm concerned. Because he's telling you if your allegiance isn't to the truth and freedom, I don't want to know you. I don't want to know you. And we hope history forgets that you ever were with us at this time.
You don't know me!
Because you deserve to be forgotten. That's what he's saying here.
Shit!
You know, I couldn't agree more.
I just want to say,
persistence is required. Constant effort. We are the actual vehicles by which truth operates in the world. Therefore, it is our shared responsibility at this time to help to awaken others by continuously speaking the truth. Even if we feel burdened by this task, even if we feel no one is listening, and even if it makes all involved in this process feel uncomfortable. It's not about feeling comfort, folks. It's not about staying complacent. It's about shaking things up. Making people feel uncomfortable. Who ever told anybody that the truth would make you all warm and fuzzy inside? Who ever told anybody that? Why do people want to believe that? Who ever said that that was the case? The truth is horrible and yet needs to be embraced as a lover. Okay? With dedication to it. Even in its full horror. Thomas Paine, who I feel was the most enlightened person on the continent at the time of the American Revolution, personally. He's one of my personal heroes. And walked in the vicinity where I walk sometimes now. He said, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. I think he was one of the true anarchists that was living amongst us in the colonial days. Words attributed to the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. He said there are only two mistakes that one can ever make on the path to truth, not starting and not going all the way. All the way. I wrap up a lot of my podcasts with this quote because I love it so much. It's about persistence. It's not about saying, hey, I went this far, and now I'm uncomfortable to see the rest of the picture. I made it 3/4 up the mountain. That's far enough. Let me set up my base camp here. I'll pitch my tent, and I'm staying here. No farther. I don't want to see the peak. Okay? Until we become fully enlightened and go all the way to the summit, don't expect things to change. Don't expect them to get better. The truth has to be taken in its fullness. We need real-world practical skills. You know, this isn't just about, oh, I know this now, and I don't actually need any skills, okay? To communicate truth, skill is required. Knowledge is required, okay? To reach a good amount of people. Yeah, you can just talk to the people around you. You can communicate, to a small fraction of people that way. I'm not saying don't do that, even if you don't have these other skills. I'm saying if you want to get it out in a big way to the masses of people. And in the new form of media, which is doing things like this, through the correct and positive and empowering use of technology. People want to say, oh, there's no, technology is not, there's no role for it, we got to get rid of technology. Technology is a thing that improves life at every scale and level. It's a tool, it's how it's used, exactly. Okay? We're using technology for a powerful and enlightening purpose right now. And that's its intended use. It's to serve humanity and to serve truth. Okay? So real world skills in the technological era, I feel are absolutely required, and here's some of them. You need good organizational skills, like, hey, Art and Chris did this right today. They set this up right. I've seen people set things up real badly, and I've seen it done the correct way, which is this way. And Richard and Lisa, they've done a brilliant job here getting this all on film, and this will be going online and reaching a real wider base of people as a result. All right? So you need organizational skills. Some people are better than that with others. I'm pretty good with organization. I feel I have good, powerful organization skills. Communication skills. You need to have a way with words. You need to have a good vocabulary. You need to organize words correctly. You need to be able to communicate concepts in often a very linear fashion to people so that they can readily absorb it easily. If you're all over the place, they're not going to get the concept. You need graphic design skills in many cases. I couldn't build a presentation like this without my background in graphic design. And, thank God I have it. It's like I got jobs like I did in the
design
past,
is my
and
passion.
So they prepared me for everything that I was going to do in my future. Synchronistically worked out
Passio.
like that. But, you at least got to know how to lay out a flyer, folks. How many people here can lay out a simple flyer? That's awesome.
Passio.
I'm so highly
The
impressed
root
by
of
that. In fact,
Passio
I've
is
asked people that
pass,
in,
which stands
other
for
presentations,
passion.
2 people raise their hand.
And EO
That's
is
awesome.
IO, which is
Okay?
input
You should be proud of
output.
that.
He's passionate about input output, which is what presentation is.
How many people have basic presentation skills?
I'm passionate about input and
A little
output
less,
too.
not bad either.
Woo.
I'm impressed. Okay? Audio skills. Sometimes you got to work with audio and podcast audio, etc. Video
That's
editing
the
skills.
joke.
Richard's a master at that. Website development. This was laborious in the past, just 10 years ago. We have free open source content management systems now that make this almost a breeze. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get there, hey, you're off to the
back in
races.
the 90s.
You can maintain multiple websites then, right? So how many people can build a simple website by a show of hands? That's also awesome. I mean, kudos. Whoever hates that word, whatever. But I'm telling you, that's impressive. For an amount of people in one room to have all those skills, I'm impressed. It's very rare. All right? Networking skills. I mean, literally like people skills. I'm weak on this. All right? I can do it. I don't like doing it. I don't like marketing and promotion either. I'm not a good marketer of my work. I'm trying to get better at that, but I need some work with that. And maybe there's people that can help me with that. But, I have a good chunk of all these skills. I could do all of them. I'm not so good on the last 2. I need more work. But, if most of us don't have these skills, we're not going to be reaching the optimum number of people. We need to become the new media that is dedicated to truth and put that out there for other people's consumption and other people's edification. All right? We are the answer. We are the illuminators, the ones who will help to enlighten other people once we've taken this knowledge into ourselves. And then that's only the beginning, folks. You got to put it back out there. I tell people the story. I had all this knowledge for a long time. Sitting on it, doing nothing with it, just taking more in. Oh, I want to make sure I got it all right. I want to make sure I got the whole picture. I go to a meeting in the state of Virginia. Virgin, the goddess. Okay? Care. Very synchronistic. A woman comes up to me. She says,
He just did the name of a state for those that weren't paying attention.
So what do you mean, what am I doing? She said, what are you doing with all the knowledge you have? You doing lectures, presentations, videos, audio? What are you doing? I'm not doing any of those things. Taking a lot more in, downloading a lot more videos. She goes like this, and it's just so matter-of-factly and harshly. What makes you think you have the right to do that? What makes you think you can keep taking all of this in, all of this in, all of this in, and not put any of it back out? What makes you think you even have a right to do that? I was like, it was like someone hit me in the face. She said, this was her phrase. She said, I'll never forget it. You're Niagara Falls in a water balloon. You're taking all this in and all this pressure building up. It's got no outlet. It's going to burst. She said, you have to put an outlet valve on that knowledge
and let it flow out of you and go out to others, and then more will come in. Right now, there's no pressure release valve. You're Niagara Falls in a water balloon. It's like a truck ran me over, Literally like I got hit by a truck. I came up with the idea for what was happening like a couple of weeks after that. So I could think about it. All I could think about was what she said, kept echoing in my head. What makes you think you have a right to do that? And didn't say it nice. Like, said it like, you're not doing the right thing here. Get up off the ass. That was the tone it was said in.
Damn. Damn,
Who knows,
boy.
man? If that wasn't said to me at that time, I might not be doing anything.
Damn, boy. He's thick.
I'd like to think at some point I would have, but...
Boy,
At the crossroads,
that's
this is the
a
last section.
thick ass boy.
Quote by
Damn.
R. Buckman, the Dark Ages still reign over all of humanity, and the depth and persistence of this domination are only now becoming clear. This Dark Ages prison has no steel bars, no chains, or locks. Instead, it is locked by misorientation and built upon misinformation. Caught up in a plethora of conditioned reflexes and driven by the human ego, both warden and prisoner attempt meagerly to compete with God. All are intractably skeptical of what they do not understand. We are powerfully imprisoned in these dark ages simply by the terms in which we have been conditioned to think. The conditioning of our thought is what has kept us in this prison. And only now, the actual depth of the dark ages that we are in are starting to become clear to some people. We are in the time that I call the apocalypse, and actually, I want to start rephrasing this. I want to actually explain to people we're not in the apocalypse anymore. We are now in post-apocalyptic times. We are living in post-apocalypse. The apocalypse has already occurred.
This was before COVID.
We are living in the time after the apocalypse. And what do I mean by that? Well, we got to look at the meaning of the word. Okay? From the Greek prefix, apo, which means away from, off of, or removed
one
from.
more. Okay, you
And
have
then
to
the
get
Greek
one
verb
more in.
kalyptine,
Yep.
which means to cover.
Oh, you
or
think
to
this is the
conceal,
last one?
hide. So, apocalypse means literally
shit.
to take the cover off of, to remove the veil from, or to take something out of hiding. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another big surprise. The veil has already been lifted. The truth is already out there. It's out. The truth about what's going on here
Come
has been going on
on.
the earth is out. It has been de-occulted.
What?
And not just by me, by many, many other researchers. Okay? There's a laundry list of them out on my website, and I talk about in a podcast.
If you want to say something, let me
It's
know.
all out there.
In what universe?
It literally means to reveal
In
or
what
to
universe does apocalypse mean to lift the veil? In what universe does it really mean to lift the veil? When you say, "Oh my God, I think there's an apocalypse coming," are you saying, "Wow, someone's going to lift the veil and just reveal everything to us"? No, you're talking like nuclear weapons are going to fall and like destroy society and bring us all back to like Fallout or like cavemen whacking each other over the head with sticks. I'm sorry, it's just. It's every time he does it, it chips a little of my soul away.
take out of hiding. The apocalypse is the great revealing of the truth to the masses of people. Or it is what I simply refer to as the process of de-occulting the truth, removing it from being hidden. What humanity needs to do is make what I call the cosmic apology. And I'll get to what that means. See these words right here? I was wrong. That's the most powerful phrase that can ever be said by a human being. The second most powerful phrase I would acknowledge is I love you. But this is more powerful than even that. Because this is about internal change, not just a dynamic or an interaction or a relationship with another. This is about an internal metamorphosis. When you say these words, this is the phrase of all power. No is the word of all power by which we reclaim our power. But this is the phrase of power. All right? Okay, the word apology comes from Greek, apo, meaning away from, off of, or removed from, as we just seen. And the Greek noun logos. Logos means word. Okay? So hence, an apology, it literally means to go away from the word. Or
Told you it
to
wasn't
give
done.
back the word. Okay? You are taking it back. So if I make an apology, I said something, I didn't really mean it, or I want to retract it, an apology
I hate
means,
that you're
take
right.
back what I just said. Okay? I'm taking it back, I'm removing
I
the
hate
word.
myself for being
all
right.
I'm going away from the former word or phrase that I just said. That's an apology in the standard colloquial English understanding sense. All right? Let's look at what I call the cosmic apology, and where this term really comes from, what it really means. See, the Greek noun logos, which is written there in Greek script, which means word in Greek, it comes from the Greek verb lego. All right? Lego in Greek means to speak or to say. That's where we get the English word lexicon from. All right? The Latin noun lex legis is related to the Greek verb lego, to say. Again, because who put the laws into manifestation? The Creator did. How did the Creator manifest the physical universe and all the laws? Spoke it into existence. Reality and truth are spoken into existence by the power of vibration, the vibratory power of voice. Okay? So the Creator created the universe by the phrase, fiat lux in Latin. It means let there be light. Okay? The Latin noun lex legis, meaning law, is actually derived from this Greek verb lego, meaning to speak or to say. God, and not man, is the logos, the author of law, the one who spoke the law into existence at the creation of the universe, because natural law is the boundary conditions of the manifested reality called the physical universe. These are the boundary conditions which govern it. Humanity's work is to learn to listen to God's word. Not man's word, not man's law. Natural law, spiritual law, moral law, God's law, karmic law. I don't care what you want to call it. Call it whatever you want. Okay? Consequentialism. This is the truth.
Don't call it consequentialism.
You want to talk about what all these phrases really mean? You have to go back to the word truth. That's it. The truth about what is.
It's bad enough people accuse me of being
Humanity needs to
utilitarian.
align its behavior to this law, God's law, natural law. Without alignment of its behavior, don't expect to natural law. Don't expect a thing to change here. Expect it to rapidly grow worse. Humanity must make a cosmic apology by giving the word, okay, which means the authorship of creating law. So we think we're the authors, we're the authorities. That's what author means, right? Author. What's another word for author? This is just this is how mind control through words works, right? An author is a what? A writer. But what are you saying there? An author who has authority, they are authoring something, is a writer. They are a right, R-I-G-H-T-E-R.
They're a writer!
Making it into a right.
They're a writer! R-A-G-H-T-er.
Which means a writer, meaning one who makes rights. Which means someone who believes they're God.
Fucking flawless logic. Flawless.
I'm making rights. I'm a writer.
I'm making rights right now. I'm writing in this Word doc.
People who believe they're God. Sick, psychopathic.
You fuckhead. That is the stupidest thing you interpreted there.
Dark New World Order. We need to give the word back. That's what an apology is. And who it needs to be given back to is the creator of the universe, because that's the author of the law. That's its rightful owner. The word doesn't belong to us, folks. The word belongs to God. That's why it says at the beginning of the biblical text, in the beginning was the word, and the word was God.
That's his word.
You know, that's what the logos is. Natural law. God is law.
Word.
You want the best definition I can ever give you for the word God? Law. People don't want to look at it like that. Very few people ever look at it like that. That's what the force of creation is. It's natural law. It's how we co-create our reality, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. This apology is accomplished when we open our minds and hearts to truth and we start saying the lost word no to evil, to the presence of evil in our lives.
I'm going to make this the thumbnail of the video
what was known as
after the stream is over.
The JED pillars, depending on how certain people pronounce it. And these JED pillars represented stability and enlightenment. And they represent the two principles, the sacred feminine principle of non-aggression and the sacred masculine principle of self-defense. The initiate is the enlightened one who is incorporated and bridged both pillars and has come to the place of cosmic illumination, which is represented by the winged disc of Ma'at in the Comitian tradition, which is over the lintel between the two pillars. That winged disc of Ma'at. Ma'at was considered a great mother goddess in the Comitian, the ancient Egyptian traditions. Okay? She was the force. She was a personified deity. You know, the ancient Comitians didn't actually worship a physical woman. It's not what this was. It was the personification of truth and justice and order and natural law that was encapsulated as the sacred feminine essence. And she was above all the other deities in the pantheon of Egyptian deities, of Comitian deities. Ma'at, there was no god or goddess higher. And how they looked at alignment with Ma'at is if you wanted to have order and you wanted to avoid chaos, you learned the teachings of Ma'at because she was the goddess of justice and she was the goddess of righteousness. She was the goddess that brought order if you aligned yourself to her teachings, and her teachings were natural law. So that's what this is here. This is saying we need to take away the word. It's not saying remain silent and don't use your voice. It's not what it's ever been saying. This is a symbolic allegory for the apology, right? You know what else the G in the middle of the compasses and square is? Apollo G.
Oh, it's just a letter in the word now. We're getting way worse. It's just
the G in the middle of the compasses and square in allegory also represents, because one of the big deities, the Greek deities that is often.
Does this work on people?
The Freemasonic tradition is Apollo. He was a sun
It's
god.
not even remotely cogent anymore.
To Horus in the Egyptian tradition, and Jesus in the Christian tradition.
I'm retarded.
All right. So that's
Apollo
the middle
G.
That's what the initiate represents. You know, I started this presentation with a slide before we begin.
Rock solid argument.
And it's up to you to take it further. You know, what you'll do with this knowledge is entirely up to you. See, this is a painting by Alex Gray that shows the worldview.
I mean, come on, guys. You have to start seeing through this at some point, right?
Forms of imbalance, and we're going to create negative
Apology
right? Or we're
was his argument.
Law,
come on. I have faith in you. You can see through this, right?
And sacred feminine aspect of our being.
Right?
Natural law, living in harmony with it, can only lead to these conditions: freedom, peace, prosperity, the continuation of our species, our actual physical survival, and our evolutionary progress in consciousness. That's what living in harmony with natural law leads to. Conversely, living in opposition to natural law will get us this side of the world tree. It'll bring this world, this hellish world of chaos and destruction. Because living in opposition to natural law can only lead to these states: control, enslavement, war, chaos, evolutionary stagnation, and ultimately the extinction of our species. Which will we choose? You know, that's still up in the air. I can't tell you that. Only each individual can make that decision for themselves, and then that will play out in the aggregate, in the mass consciousness, the numbers. Thomas Jefferson said a free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature, and this was also embedded in the Declaration of Independence. The laws of nature and of nature's God, and not as the gift of their magistrates. John Locke said the natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man, but only to have the law of nature for his rule. Former Grand Master of the Order of the Rose Cross, the Rosicrucian tradition, Francis Bacon, said, nature, to be commanded, must first be obeyed. If we want the forces of the cosmos on our side, we have to learn and adhere to the principles of natural law. If we do not align our behavior to that, nature will not stand with us. It will continuously stand against us, and it will itself create more strife and suffering in our lives. And we certainly won't command it. We won't command its forces with things like free energy used for any positive purpose. It'll only be used for destructive purposes. The psychologist Alfred Adler said there is a law that man should love his neighbor as himself, and he's referring, of course, here to the Golden Rule. In a few hundred years, it should be as natural to mankind as breathing or the upright gait. But if he does not learn it, he must perish. And you know, folks, I would really hope this is going to take less than a few hundred years. But based on where we're at, I'm not so sure. You know? I think we could do it a lot faster than that if we accept the key that's been shown here today, that, as I said before, has the power to unlock all the locks on all the doors to all the cages. And that's what the knowledge of natural law comprises. Will we make the choice to climb the ladder of consciousness through an act of our own free will, choice, and efforts? It's not a simple climb. I mean, it's a difficult climb. It's not overly complicated to learn these concepts, to learn these truths. It involves abandoning many things that we've already been conditioned with that don't serve who we are, okay? I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, all right? It involves a lot of deep introspective work. But if we do it, we can step out of the prison that we've imposed upon ourselves by balancing the sacred feminine and masculine forces within each one of us. And by recognizing our own inherent sovereignty, and that there is no legitimacy and never has been any legitimacy to slavery and control and the external rulership of human beings as subjects. Okay? That recognition of sovereignty has to go hand in hand with our knowledge of natural law. It's a totally integrated component of it. This was the title slide. This tarot card was on the title slide. When you understand, and I've talked about this in some of my work online, when you understand the deep connection to the tarot tradition and other mystery tradition teachings, specifically its very deep interwoven relationship to the Kabbalistic tradition of the Middle Eastern mystery traditions, all right? You understand that this card right here actually represents the will of creation and what creation itself, what the mind of the universe itself ultimately wants to manifest in physical reality. Not in some other worldly dream world or fantasy realm or spiritual reality that is to come or not come. Right here in the physical domain, which is not separate and distinct from the spiritual domain. They are one and the same. This card is known as the Justice card, okay? And it's based on the Latin word jus, which means right or law, okay? That's where we get the English word justice. This card represents balance between the pillars, as you see on the right side of the king, holding the sword of truth in hand, and the scales of truth and justice have been perfectly balanced and are in the other hand. And it represents sovereignty, and it represents alignment with natural law, and most of all, it represents alignment with truth and the manifestation of order. That can only happen when we align our behaviors to the principles of natural law. Only then will we see the manifestation that the universe is itself wishing for us and trying to help us create, which is justice and order. If we let go of the things that are holding us back and break our mental chains of bondage, we can create a world that is based in actual, real freedom. It is possible. I'm not telling you it's not going to be arduous work or a difficult journey, but it can be done, okay? If we choose to do that, we're going to see advances and things that are going to be created, that the world is going to look so drastically different if we go down that middle path to the truth and to order and to justice through the understanding of natural law and actually applying it and living it in our lives, that the changes we're going to experience are going to be so positive and so transformative that we can scarcely even imagine what the world will be like on the other side of that work, on the other side of that transformation. Will that be done? Maybe, maybe not. The answer will come from what you see in the reflection of that device right there. That's what will determine it. Nothing else.
It's up to each individual. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind attention today.
Come on, be a sport. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate.
See, what I just did there was order follow, which is evil. Fuck. Jim. God damn it.
Good job, boys. Well, since I've got the mic, I wanted to make sure I said this anyways. Everybody, since we were doing applauses, everybody in both the Odyssey and the YouTube chat sections, go ahead and give Patrick a massive round of applause for putting this together. This was something that we've been planning for a while, and it's awesome that we could come onto his channel and go through this whole thing with him. So everybody give him those round of applause, you dirty order followers.
Don't do it. And, don't do it. Evil.
Evil.
Obey. Obey. Obey the beaver.
Yeah, the dude's awesome. And super thank you to everybody who super chatted, especially now that everything's going towards voluntary virtue, which is just awesome. Going to make things better for people in need. So absolutely awesome to everybody who donated and super chatted. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, and my pre-closing.
But we're not done. We still have closing arguments.
Yeah, my pre-closer as well is I've been keeping an eye on the view count, and I have been honestly quite astounded. We've had an average of 40 people watching this stream for 13 hours and 15 minutes, which is just mind-blowing for me. Like I expected we would have 3 people some of the time, not 40. Like, to have an audience of 40 people, I consider myself beyond honored to have that many people interested in sitting through what we have just sat through in an attempt to sort of dig into the nitty-gritty, nerdy details of philosophy. So I want to thank all of you for watching. And I want to thank Jim and Christian for being willing to do this with me.
This is my wheelhouse.
If it wasn't, I mean, I would have been here by myself. Can you imagine this? Just me for 13 hours. I would have died. So thank you, Christian and Jim. I feel like I owe you one now. So if you ever need me for a long ass stream, I feel like I owe you one. So
well, I don't need you on for the whole time, but you should pop on once when I do another Desert Bus stream. You have to stay for the whole 8.
Can I help you drive? I mean, yeah, you can call in your favor. Just let me know.
Okay. I'll drink, you drive.
Okay, so how should we decide the order of closing statements? Who wants to go first?
Oh, I don't care.
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. Oh,
Christian?
me?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Okay, so I kind of want to start with because I don't want to take too much time in my closing statements because I do want to save a little bit of time at the end for us to answer some questions that we've received in the meantime that I promised people we would get back to. So if I don't get to your question, I said to get back to you, just put in the comments and be like, hey, don't forget about me. But I want to start with some of the things that I agree with. And I think that's important because we're not enemies with Passio here. None of the people on camera here think Passio is a deplorable person who should be silenced or who is just saying just the most god-awful things that should not be put out to all of these people or anything like that. In fact, without knowing the exact background of everybody on this platform, I'm sure we agree with 90%, if not more, of the conclusions that he reached to some degree. If we were having a casual campfire or bar conversation, as he alluded to in one of his analogies, I'm sure we would just have a grand time talking about the state and individual sovereignty and whatnot and getting into the intricacies together. I'm sure it would be a great conversation. I liked one thing that I wish he had done a little bit more, but I still am going to give him credit for because I think it was close enough that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about philosophy do, is he mentioned this state of chaos. And one big thing for me in philosophy is talking about the state of nature, because in my works, I think the state of nature is an integral part of the formation of any ethical system. And without consideration of it, I don't think you can really build an ethical system at all to begin with. That's my opinion. But his state of chaos is eerily similar. He didn't go into like the largest definitions of it, but in good faith, I'm going to say it's pretty damn close to what I would call a state of nature. And I'm going to assume that if we could have him here to talk about it, it would be almost identical, just based off of the way he talked about it. So I liked that he brought that up. Now, onto some of the things I didn't like. And I think there might be a little repetition between us, but I think maybe that'll just drive the point home, because repetition seems to be a common trend across this presentation. He lost me. We have a running list in Monk of Jesus. We have a running Google Doc, which you can find in the description, which we put out pretty detailed notes for part 1 and 2. We kind of trailed off in part 3, but that was more applied ethics, so that wasn't really paramount to the discussion that we were having. But point 6, I'm sorry, my contacts are a little foggy right now because it's so late. Point 8 on our list of things is where pretty much Passio lost me. And that is, there exists universal and spiritual laws. To me, I can accept a lot of premises that can be substantiated later, or things that can be either inferred, perhaps even, or just taken at face value that can be addressed later in arguments. But whenever you're making a claim like this, it has to be substantiated. So to me, this was like the first little red flag that popped up. There exists universal and spiritual laws. There has to be some kind of evidence for that, right? This is just the rules of rationalization suggest that I should expect evidence for all of these things, but in good faith, this is kind of where I draw the line. Like I was willing to accept the occult knowledge stuff, everything like that. Another thing that both I was excited for and mildly concerned me is that about an hour into the conversation, Passio said that this was a master key to unlock all of the knowledge, a complete body of work. So this presentation is supposed to be taken as everything you need to know to understand natural law. I think my further comment, I won't speak more on that point. I think my further comments will kind of address some of the criticisms that I have with that statement in particular. A couple more specific point things before I get into the general. The 8 total principles, which constitute the master key to universal wisdom, were all entirely just assertions. They were just things put out there that he said, these are the keys. If you understand these things, you will have total knowledge that you need to universal wisdom. And from then on, everything else will just kind of make sense and fall into line and be great. I was very not happy with the unsubstantiated claims there. I can deal with a lot of unsubstantiated claims, but in the points that are super critical by his own words to understanding this concept of natural law, I had an issue with that. And the last thing that I want to really harp on before I turn it over is that his conceptions of morality and the way he talks about morality and the way he applies morality were not only unsubstantiated, but just go in the face of pretty much every understanding anyone has. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm just saying this to be like really honest and truthful to you guys about my takeaways from this. It's just very much so not what any learned or respected person has on these topics. And that is a big problem, because this is an ethical system. And if you can't talk about morality in a way that is not only valid and sound, but is cogent as well, you're going to have a really hard time coming with any sort of reasonable conclusions to your ethical system, which is basically what all of part 3 was just a bunch of applied ethics, which is why we didn't do as much commentary on those. So I think those are my like really big takeaways. Maybe we can get into the nitty gritty a little bit later, but yeah, I think that's what I've got to say for now.
Jim?
Well, first of all, since we're in a new day.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
So I went into this thinking that we were going to have a big discussion about natural rights, natural law. I had been preparing for it. I read a book about it just to make sure that I was up on my game when it came to natural law. And after starting listening to some of the things that were in this thing, I realized that I was going to be kind of going in blind, even though I just got read up reading on natural law. So that was kind of interesting. I'll dig into a little passage from this, which I found interesting later on. But I'm going to kind of echo a lot of the same things. So I'm going to keep it kind of brief of what Christian was saying, because I think he kind of nailed it. There was a lot of things that he was saying for someone who was claiming that this is some sort of science, that this is objective truth, that all of these things were undeniable. It would be helpful for them to be substantiated in some way, either with some sort of empirical evidence or some sort of rational argument to show that this was true. However, we didn't get any of that. The closest we got was kind of like arguments from etymology. One of the things that really bugs me about that, besides it being a logical fallacy, is that you can pretty much kind of make arguments about pretty much anything, and some of these things weren't even accurate representations of the etymology of the words he was using, specifically government, which even still, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of government, to say the least. I'm quite the unfan. However, to say that they're mind control because of the etymology of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when we can actually show some of the things that they do, like milieu control, loading of the language, and sort of things like that actually show there is some sort of thought reform behavior that the state engages in, not just in the United States, but a lot of this stuff was kind of based in even cult tech, even like not a cult, cults, how cults mind reform people. Originally, all that kind of stuff was done investigating Chinese prisoners of war, which that stuff could have been really interesting to dig into as far as how the state uses it today. One of the things that also really bothered me quite a bit was not just the definitions of things, but how he defined natural law. And a lot of things were kind of very unclear. And it wasn't until like later on where things started getting unpacked that I actually understood what he was trying to argue, specifically that when he was comparing natural law to physics and how you can't really break the laws of physics or thermodynamics, but you could somehow break the natural law and violate other people's rights. And then it wasn't until later that you realize that, okay, the mechanism that stops you from doing it is karmic law. A lot of things that really bothered me is just the obsession with misrepresenting Satanism. He probably was probably some sort of a member of a group that called himself a satanic church. However, if you're really interested in what Satanism is, I highly recommend you check out the Satanic Bible. It's not going to hurt you. You can read it critically and get an understanding of what it is. It's a really great book, and you only have to read half of it because the other half are just a bunch of satanic rituals, which is explained in the book. And it's a really interesting read, and you can get a lot out of it. In fact, there's a really good chapter about psychic vampires I highly recommend, even to people who are the most ardent Christians. But either way, misrepresenting of also other terms like consequentialism, which now I'm probably going to end up having to deal with some of the fallout from that, also being called a utilitarian, just because I use that moniker. That's also a little bit problematic. And again, like a lot of this stuff was just really unsubstantiated, and especially some of the things that I really wanted to understand in terms of his construction of natural law. Now, if you're really interested in what natural law is historically, what it has evolved to today, and what it is in terms of libertarianism, I can give you some recommendations of people to read if you are really interested in the pro-natural law arguments. If you really want to, Rand would be a good start. Rothbard, Samuel Konkin has also written a lot of this stuff as well, and a lot of their kind of devotees have also kind of expanded on this as well. But one of the things I did want to read from this book, The Myth of Natural Rights, where he's quoting George Smith. So when libertarians claim that coercion is contrary to natural law or the nature of man, they must realize, aside from the truth or falsity of this assertion, that such an appeal to nature places them in a confused and nebulous political tradition. And L.A. Rollins adds, confused and nebulous indeed. Also highly recommend this book once you actually dug into the real arguments for natural law, to give that a look as well. And you can also see the back and forth between Rothbard, Konkin, and some of the other people that he was rebutting in that. By the way, if you're ever in Texas, go to Buc-ee's and try the beaver nuggets and the ghost pepper jerky. And this is not a paid sponsor, I swear to God.
All right, my turn. Okay. This is my summary. Summary is broken down into parts. Sum, which can mean use. Airy in summary can mean negation. So negation of use is kind of what we're talking about here. Another way of saying negation of use is useless. Another way of saying useless would be junk. What we have experienced here today is why I titled the stream The Junk Science of Natural Law. Here's my summary. I want to believe as many true things as I can, and I want to believe as few false things as I can. In an attempt to achieve that, I have standards of reason and evidence that must be met before I consider something to be true, and below which I consider something to be false. I do not believe it. Passio, his conclusions are mostly good. I'm just going to repeat everything that everybody else has said so far because it's true. Mostly good. We could sit at a bar. We'd agree. We'd probably make great neighbors. Honestly, if Passio is my neighbor, I would probably get along so much better with him than I do with any of the neighbors anywhere near my house right now. We would agree on so much, and we would probably live peacefully for the rest of our lives together. There was a few disagreements in his conclusions that we probably wouldn't agree on. Lies as a form of theft, invalid forms of property, veganism. Certainly, I've made a lot of content on that. Certainly, I disagree with his conclusions on that. But, I mean, for the most part, we'd be fine. In the beginning of this presentation, Passio told us that we should be skeptical of our information sources. So I'm going to do him the honor of being skeptical of him as a source of information. And that's what we've been doing this whole time. He says that harmful behavior in the aggregate results in a less desirable or successful society. And that's kind of like his entire thesis in a sentence, is that in the aggregate, harmful behavior results in a more harmful society, a less successful, a less desirable society. The more harm you have, the worse your society will do. And the less harm you have, the more prolific and prosperous your society will be. I don't dispute this. But we have entered the ring of philosophy. We have elevated our standards to those of reason and evidence and accuracy and precision in our language and in our thought process. And that does not require, that sentence, harmful behavior in the aggregate results in a more desirable or successful society, does not rise to his own claim that it forms a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behavior and of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful and non-harmful behavior. Those words that he used in the context of philosophy, in the context of natural law and moral philosophy and ethics that we're talking about here, it doesn't meet that standard. It just doesn't. There's too much subjectivity in there. There's too much. What constitutes harm? Who decides? For some, harm people would be appreciative of. I know when I go to my doctor and ask him to cut me open, he's harming me in a way that I really, really want him to. What constitutes a successful or preferable society? People's opinions are going to be almost as many opinions as there are people on what this stuff means. And the subjectivity built into the language that he uses is one of the biggest defeaters of his own standard that we're supposed to rise to in this discussion. We have not been given a universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable situation or philosophy. We haven't. Another one of the big problems that I have is something that came up constantly. It goes something like this: if you don't understand where words come from or came from and what they were intended to mean back in time, back in history, regardless of modern connotations, those original meanings are still important somehow. They still affect you somehow. It's like they're magic spells. These words are magic spells. They contain power, and even though no one knows what the spells do anymore, when they're cast, they still have the same effect. No evidence was presented for this, which is kind of a theme. He asserts that the original meanings are their real meanings, and that we have no idea what the words we use on a daily basis actually mean and what effects they actually have when we use them. No evidence was presented for that thesis. He says that everything that exists came through thought first. What about thought? No evidence was presented for this. This was another assertion. Free will is based on randomness. No evidence presented for this assertion. Are you getting a theme? Right versus wrong are diametrically opposed and do not exist as constructs in the human mind. Anyone that believes that is engaged in Satanism. No evidence was presented for this thesis. Right equals correct, based in truth, moral, in harmony with natural law, actions based in it do not result in harm to other beings. Why does the word right mean that? No evidence was presented. Wrong means incorrect, not based in truth, immoral, in opposition to natural law, actions based in it result in harm to other sentient beings. Why does wrong mean that? What in nature proves that that is what the word wrong means? No evidence was presented for this in this presentation today. Also, especially towards the end of this thing, there were actually through the whole thing, there's some like red flags for manipulative techniques that can be used on an audience that isn't aware of what's going on. I have a little list of them. Talking about occult, forbidden knowledge. This is a sales technique used commonly to get you to buy a package, to get you access to some special training that will, learn this one trick to be successful in the real estate industry. I talked about that briefly earlier. It's amplified when we're talking about occult, forbidden knowledge. I'm not saying that any one of these things on their own is actually a problem. I'm just saying we've got a little red flag here and a little one here and a little one there. Another one is that that it requires this massive amount of study to get it or to understand it or to get involved in it. And if you don't understand it yet, and if you think I'm wrong, it's just because you don't understand it yet and you need to consume more of my content. Cults do that. I'm not saying he's doing it. I'm just saying it's another little red flag. You put enough little red flags together, I start to get more and more worried. Rampant language manipulation, changes to word definitions, word games, and equivocations. Rampant. We've called it out pretty much every time it's happened in this 13 and a half hour stream. It has been everywhere. Some of the definitions have been good, some of them haven't. But I don't care about that. We can totally change the definition of language when we're making a philosophical proof. That's fine. We can change definitions of words for the sake of the conversation as long as we call it out, no problem. But what we can't do is use this etymology. We can't break up the words into pieces and then invert logic and say, well, because this piece of the word used to mean this and that piece of the word used to mean that there's some kind of actual logical rational connection that then can be used as a proof of some point you're going to make. That's a non sequitur. That doesn't work. Especially towards the end, I think it was G, the word G in apology had a connection to something else he was saying. Therefore, there was some kind of argument there. Nonsense. That's a red flag for somebody that's either non-thinking or trying to trick you. I'm not going to tell you which I think it is. Gaslighting. This is a big one. And I've got this constantly over the past 3 years from his supporters. Gaslighting in the form of, Patrick, if you don't agree, it's because you're not capable of understanding or your brain is just so unbalanced that you can't. You're telling me that my mental faculties and my ability to reason are insufficient or broken in a way that I can't see the truth in the way you want. It's not a problem with your conception of the ideas involved. No. It's a problem with me. I'm just actually broken. That is manipulation. That is gaslighting. That is what abusive husbands do to their spouses when they complain about getting beat. I'm not saying again that Mark Passio is trying to be abusive. I'm saying it's another little red flag. The last little red flag is that whole thing at the end. We are under attack, and it's us to us. It's up to us as heroes to save this thing. It's another little red flag. That's what cult leader types do. Not saying Passio's doing that. I'm just saying this was a list of red flags that I have for manipulation, possible manipulation techniques that have been in use over the course of this presentation. It was funny at the end, he talked about negative knowledge as the illusion of knowledge. I'm telling you that the last 8 hours, the 13 hours of this was kind of that. It was the illusion of knowledge. He talked a lot, but he didn't back anything up. He said a lot of words. He talked about a lot of stuff, but it was all baseless. It was the illusion that he taught you something. He didn't. Or if he did, it was very little. As Christian said, this was supposed to be everything we needed to understand natural law, and it was precisely almost nothing that we needed to understand his conception of natural law. There is a fallacy called, and so we've been complaining about assertions. We've been memeing about him just making assertion after assertion over and over in this presentation. It's actually a fallacy. It's called the fallacy of bare assertion. Bare as in not based. Not based, not as in not based, but in like not based on anything. It's like if I were to tell you, tomorrow it is going to rain, and you say, how do you know? And I say, Like, why do you care what I'm telling you or what I think if I'm not even worried about backing it up or if I'm not providing any reason or evidence for it? That is the fallacy of bare assertion, and that really should be the title of this video. Honestly, like if I were going to retitle it, I would probably title it The Fallacy of Bare Assertion in 14 Hours. There's a Latin name for the fallacy of bare assertion called ipse dixit. It's true because I say it's true. It's the fallacy of ipse dixit, and I'm probably saying that wrong. Ipse dixit or something like that. Okay, so I guess the last thing I'll say is that this conception of natural law, this philosophy, this ethical framework was not junk science. The title is inaccurate. This was not even science. This was nothing. This was story time with Mark Passio. That's my conclusion. It was nothing more. It was story time with Mark Passio. If it helps you, if it benefits you, if it improves your life, if it gives you a justification to live in a non-aggressive way where you're not hurting people and taking their stuff, more power to you. If it makes you happy, do it, man. If it makes other people happy to talk about, do it. Fine. Go for it. This is not a moral philosophy. This is not. This is not natural law. This is not a science. This is story time with Mark Passio. I'll shut up now.
Where's your mask? Well, before we open it up to viewer comments, which I have at least one saved up. Oh, I like that mask, the Bane mask.
It's good, right? It's good.
Yeah. I did want to ask. Well, actually, I'm going to take a little bit more microphone time because I wanted to get everybody's points out there before I did the what was colloquially known as the bro philosophy thing to do, and that is the point number one. Passio started his whole talk off with this: logical fallacies are invalid forms of rationalization. He started it off by calling out a logical fallacy, and I noticed at minimum an equivocation fallacy, or a few, an etymological fallacy, or a couple, well, actually, I'm going to skip that one. Sorry. Begging the question was rampant in his conversation on how natural law and morality apply to each other. Natural law is correct because it is the governing body of morality, and morality is correct because it is governed by natural law. False dilemmas were just all over the place, and I'm sure I missed an unwarranted generalization or two. So again, in an 8-hour conversation, I would expect someone to make one or two fallacies that we could clear up. If they really went over their stuff and they knew what they were talking about, I would almost expect that, and I'd be willing to look it over. But the fact that we, for this, like Patrick said, almost 14 hours we've been on air, have called out many of these multiple times, and not even to go into Patrick's very, very poignant pointing out of the bare assertion fallacy. It's a lot. It's a whole lot for somebody who based the first thing that they talked about was that logical fallacies are an invalid form of rationalization. It's too much. Too much.
Okay. Well, anything else? Any questions? Oh, yeah, let's do this one. I thought this was a good question from the Rising Sun over on Odyssey.
Is everybody getting indigestion right now or something?
What'd you say?
What? Is everyone getting indigestion right now?
No, I didn't know Christian was going to stop talking right then, so I had just taken my first big draw of whiskey, and so I was kind of like choking that one down. She said, what is the ultimate evidence that would convince you natural law is true? Who wants to take that one? Jim? You want to go first?
Well, what natural law are we talking about? Are we talking about Rothbards? Are we talking about Conkins? We're talking about Rands? Are we talking about Mark Passios?
We're talking about Passios.
Passio.
What do you think we're talking about? We just spent 13 hours listening to Passios. Why would I ask you about Rothbards?
Well, I would need at least something then.
Oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's it. Like, there would just need to be something. Whereas, like, if we were talking about any of the other ones, it's like, okay, well, it depends on which one we're talking about, because there was a couple problems here and there. Whereas Mark's, it's just, there was nothing there. I wanted something to be there, and there was just nothing. I would just like at least something to at least chew on to get started. All we got was just this, and it's like, well, can we substantiate any of these things? Because a lot of these things that he was claiming were pretty, things that that would require at least some substantiation. It wasn't like, the sky is blue. It's something that were pretty bold claims, and it's like extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and we didn't get any evidence, and the claim just kept getting more and more extraordinary. And I would just at least like to have something backing at least something. Even if it's weak, even if the evidence is scant, at least there needs to be at least something there that I could at least chew on. Because I haven't seen any evidence for anything that he's presented whatsoever. Not even the first steps of his argumentation. There was no argumentation. It was just, this is true, and this is also true, and this is also true, and this is also true. And he doesn't even attempt to link these disparate facts together. You just kind of, it's just implied that they are, and I don't know what order they are or how they're connected. There was just nothing there. And I would just at least like, instead of having a bunch of disparate facts, I would at least like to have someone pull the yarn between all the conspiracy points to tell me that, so-and-so wasn't getting their mail. But I didn't even get that.
So for the people that are obviously still not getting it, when you say there was nothing there, and they watch what we just watched, and they see a lot there, what would you say to show the difference between what they saw in that and what we're seeing in that? Because we've all kind of had the same evaluation that there was very little, if not nothing there. But we have some people in chat that follow Passio, and they're giving me the respect of their time and attention on this video, and they think there was a lot there. So why is there a delta?
Okay, so let's just bring this to an analogy of something that I was just recently getting involved with, especially with like the JFK assassination, right? So we can say that Oswald, right, was a communist. He had big issues with JFK. He was always kind of interested in talking about JFK and stuff like that with his wife. The night of the murder, he was quiet during dinner, which was a little bit weird. Or the night before, he showed up with a bag of like shower rods. So all these things kind of sound kind of interesting, but once you start piecing them together and say like, okay, the reason why he was quiet was because he was reserved about possibly wanting to kill the president. He brought a bag of shower rods, which actually turned out to be the murder weapon, and he was using that as an excuse to hide the fact that he was bringing a gun to work, which they didn't allow guns at work. So there was like this pattern that you can build like a narrative on using all of these disparate facts. But if I just give you the disparate facts, you're going to be like, okay, he showed up with some shower rods to work. How does that prove that he killed JFK? There was nothing like that. It was just a bunch of disparate facts, and then you were supposed to put them together somehow. One, I didn't know whether or not any of the information was true. I have no idea. The other one is I don't know how they're connected. I want to know how these things are connected. And when people were in the chat, when we were asking like, how is this connected? A lot of these people were just making these jumps like, well, I don't like to be raped. You don't want to be enslaved. Therefore it's wrong. It's like, well, no, we need that bridge between what is and what ought to be. I don't want to be enslaved. That doesn't mean that it's immoral to enslave me. It just means that I don't want that. You need to make that case what that next leap is to show me that why it's immoral for anybody to do that. We could say that it's unpreferable for most people to do that. We can say that it probably had bad outcomes for that, but that's not the moral gap that was needed there. And especially when we're talking about objective morality, we can't just make a bunch of if-and claims. If he was making a bunch of if-and claims, that would have been completely different, and I probably would have been much more receptive to it. Because the if-and claim, there is a connection, whereas an is-ought, there's nothing. And it was one of those things that we were harping on a lot. And that wasn't even one of the main points that we were talking about. A lot of the stuff was just, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact. Well, I don't know if these are facts. A lot of these are kind of really extraordinary claims. I need extraordinary evidence to it. And then I also need to know how that's connected to the next fact over. And you zoomed in right when I was finishing my point.
Because I'm a terrible host. Objectively.
Well, you have more subs than me, so.
Only because you deleted your channel, right?
No.
Christian, did you have any answer to what is the ultimate evidence that would convince you natural law is true?
Yeah, and I'll just be honest. I have a really high burden of proof. I think when, so I came into this with, I have a lot of preconceptions of what natural law is. It just based off of my studies and the different philosophers that I've read and the content that I've consumed, and what has helped me form my interpretations of what a good ethical system would be. I had a very different conception of what natural law would be, but it somehow still met the same standards for proof as Passio's, because he insisted on, and if you'll give me 1 second to find this, the set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable laws. This is a completely different type of natural law than what most philosophers talk about, but it still tries to bear that same burden. And I think that's probably the best way of putting it, is that I wanted evidence of what would 100%, you know what? I won't even say that much. If it was 75, 50% of the way to demonstrating a universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable set of laws, I would be very interested to consume more content, because that would be the closest anybody has ever gotten to meeting that standard. And that's it. I don't place any more burden on what Passio is trying to say than what he put on himself. If he said natural laws are an interesting way of thinking about human psychology, I would place no more burden onto his claims than that. And this whole conversation would have been, well, that was pretty interesting. He talked about a unique way of looking at human psychology and its impacts on like a collective whole. Interesting, right? But he didn't. He set out natural laws as a universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable set of laws. He didn't meet that standard. That's a standard he put on himself. And I'm not gonna walk back that standard, even in good faith. You know what? Actually, in good faith, I should hold him to that standard. It would be bad faith for me to say, well, you know what? He said these things, but he must have not really meant those, because he didn't build that up. It must have just been like an analogy for human psychology. In good faith, I must take his words at face value. And he did not do the work to build this up. I mean, I could go through each of these points and talk about how they weren't. And we've done that a lot through these 14 almost hours of us being on stream, where he's failed to meet these standards. I mean, objective, over and over and over and over again, we have talked about how his claims are unsubstantiated. And I know people are memeing about it. in the comments. Not all of you guys. Some of you guys are super cool and are getting the picture. But a few in particular can't get over this hill that an assertion isn't good enough to substantiate something that is objective. It's not. If I sat in front of you, I'll do it right now. The sun is not real. That's an assertion. That's an assertion. I can just say that. I don't have to say a damn thing. It's an assertion. But are you going to believe me? Are you going to sit here and be like, what the fuck? The sun is obviously real. It's in the sky, right? This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It seems like there's you know what? I'm not even, the people I'm talking about, I don't even feel bad for saying this. It feels like a bias against us for holding Passio to the standards that he put himself to. And I know I'm deviating a little bit from the topic, but that is my standards. My standards for proof are what Passio put on himself. It's nothing more. Whatever he says it's going to be, I expect him to make it that. If he doesn't, he didn't meet his own standards. And so how can he meet my standards? That's what he told me he was going to do. So
this is not a trivial thing either. Like, if he were to have been right after this 14-hour stream, and I went to bed here in a little bit with this new realization of this new, completely new paradigm on life and reality and how I interact with the world around me and how my behaviors and my consciousness and my thoughts affect my behaviors and my behaviors affect the world around me and the people around me and how successful me and my community are. That would change everything in my life. Everything. It would affect everything. That's so huge. You think I'm just gonna change my life because some asshole on YouTube spent 8 hours telling me his assertions? Come on! Come on! You want to change my entire life? I need evidence! Not insults and not time wasting. I need proof beyond, oh, generally people do better when they hurt each other less. No shit! No shit! Societies do better when they hurt each other less. Got it. Okay. That's not an objective universal philosophy. I'm going to need more than that. That's my answer to what evidence would suffice. I need evidence, and I need a lot of it. I have a high standard of evidence before I change my entire worldview. Please, come on. No, I need an argument. I need a solid proof behind it, and I need a lot of evidence to back it up. It has to be valid, and it has to be sound. Those are my standards of belief. All right. Final question. I have
one more question for you guys.
Oh, okay.
One more question.
All right.
But we can get to that last. I really want to make sure the viewers are paid off, especially those of you who sat around for hours and watched us. But I wanted to ask for my own sanity. And I'm not trying to attack Passio here, but did any of you two see a single argument that supported his claims for natural law or how morality is influenced by natural law? A single argument. He's made arguments. I won't contest that. He has made arguments, but towards his central claim, did he make a single argument? Because if he did, I missed it.
If his argument is harmful behavior in the aggregate results in a less desirable or successful society, that's an argument. That's not an argument meeting the standards he laid out for himself. That's an argument. And if that's what he calls natural law, then that's an argument for his conception of natural law.
Jim, I'm
one
curious.
that I would agree
I'm
with.
Genuinely curious. Yeah.
But it'd be one that I would agreed with, but I wouldn't define it as an objective moral truth. That what was the exact phrase? Oh, I closed.
Universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable.
Yeah, I would not define it as that. That's just something like kind of like a based base. Well, it's based. It's one of the kind of base, like kind of egoist kind of worldviews. If you treat people nice, generally people are going to be nice to you. And if you're an asshole and you're murdering and killing and stealing, people are going to be like, fuck this guy, get out of my store, get out of my apartment complex. You're not welcome here anymore. You're not welcome in town. You're kind of be blackballed. That's more than likely going to happen. It's not a universal axiom. It's not going to for sure happen. It's not 100% immutable. It's not 100%, as he claimed over and over again. It's not the case. There's plenty of evidence of people doing bad things and getting away with it all the time. I just needed something. I didn't see anything there. I didn't see any real arguments to substantiate. Like he was making some pretty bold claims. I mean, to have an objective morality that solved all of the problems. This is the holy grail of ethics, and a lot of people have attempted it. A lot of people, who are fairly modest, a lot of people who are, aren't so much to think they slayed the dragon. You probably know who I'm talking about. But a lot of them have failed miserably.
Ladies, you must all be herded into the vat of the fertile women, and you will be impregnated by right-wing Nazis against your will, no matter what, and you will have no way of escaping this, and you will breed the master race no matter what.
You're a racist.
Oh wait, that was the wrong one. Sorry,
I interrupted.
Hello.
But yeah, this is the holy grail, and everybody who has attempted, in my view, has failed miserably. And I'm looking for something. I'm genuinely looking for something. And the only thing that I've been able to find in the interim is things like egoism and consequentialism that kind of makes moral judgments and intuitionism to an extent. But I don't find them as good, like objective morality that has slayed the dragon that has been set out by philosophers of old. And there was just a lot of assumptions there, just a lot of assuming that, well, slavery is bad. I mean, we all wouldn't want to be slaves. Therefore, it has to be moral bad, and we need to go and find reasons why that's bad. And I think that's a bad start. I think that's a really bad start to start out with, here's a bunch of things I dislike or I think are immoral. Let me try to argue my way into proving those things are immoral. I think the better thing is to try to find what's true and then check it against things that I think most people would agree are abhorrent and see if they hold up. It's a good test. It doesn't definitively prove. I mean, we could come up with a universal moral ethical system 100% that, that may allow for certain types of, rapes or something like that. But if that's what the objective moral truth is saying, then we need to stop saying like, well, I find it abhorrent. But that's what the argumentation is, and probably further and maybe dig a little bit deeper to see whether or not something like that would be forbidden if we improved it. But if it's objective, we don't really care about the outcomes of those things. If it's an objective moral philosophy, right? We don't really care if it ends up proving that stealing is okay in certain circumstances. We would just go, okay, well, according to this moral objective truth that we all can't make a reasonable case against, it says that it's okay to steal in certain circumstances. There we go. Sorry, that's just the way the world works. But we didn't get any of that. We were just told that it's not true. And the only real kind of compelling evidence that we've got against any of those awful things is that we would feel bad if it happened to us. And it would feel bad if it happened to us, but that's not how a moral argument make.
Yeah. And you know what? You guys are both right. That was an argument that he made. So thank you for pointing that out. He did make that argument precisely.
What was the argument?
That the moral actions of individuals have a consequence on the aggregate of society.
The last thing I'm going to comment on from Aaron is to say what he just said. He said, I mean, you guys made up your mind already before you watched. Confession through projection. There was zero chance from the beginning of your engagement with us that you were going to change your mind about a damn thing. We were here engaging, looking for arguments.
Yep.
Anyway.
I kind of went in blind, so I didn't know. So, mostly blind. I knew a tiny bit, but not much.
All right. Last and most important question, and then we'll end the stream. Nobody Cares asked, does the beaver onesie have a trapdoor for going number 2?
I wish. No.
All right.
It's got a zipper on the top, right? But it's also got a zipper at the bottom that connects the same zipper. So that's how you do the other one. But now you have to take the whole thing off if you need to make it number 2Z.
So now, from now on, when anybody says, before you critique Mark Passio, you need to watch all of this content and the hours and hours, I will say, no, before you say I'm wrong, You need to watch my 14-hour live stream where we did this. All right.
Sweating that off my bucket list.
Jim, thank you for joining me. It's been fun. Christian, thank you for joining me.
Always.
It's been fun. You guys are awesome. Everybody watching, you guys are awesome too. I don't even know how to end a stream this long. Holy crap.
Worms.
Right there.
I figure it's late enough.
Worms.
I'll be in the Disenthrall Discord for probably at least another 20 minutes while I finish this whiskey to
Same.
talk
I'm
to
going to hop
anybody
over in
else
Discord
that we wanna
too.
engage.
All right, guys.
We'll see.
Adios. Worms.
Worms.
Worms.